Overseas now, back to the US, and the President Joe Biden called the evacuation of Kabul an extraordinary success. That's despite the fact that at least 100 US citizens were left behind. Live now to our Washington correspondent Annalise Nielsen. Annalise, the President says any chaos was Donald Trump's fault.
He did indeed. In his speech, he took on some of the criticism that's been levelled at his administration over the last 2 weeks and said that the deadline was enforced by the Trump administration and, as you mentioned, hailed the evacuation a success. Now, they did manage to evacuate over 120,000 people, including, he said today, 5,500 US citizens. That's down from an estimate of 6,000 yesterday. So it shows just how fluid this whole situation's been and how it was carried out in extraordinary circumstances. But those circumstances are the question. When asked about it, President Biden hasn't answered any of the questions previously. Didn't take any questions today either. But he said in his speech that he does think that he did the right thing. He'll take responsibility, but he said he ended the 20-year war.
Previous administration's agreement said that if we stuck to the May 1st deadline that they had signed on to leave by, the Taliban wouldn't attack any American forces. But if we stayed, all bets were off. So we were left with a simple decision. Either follow through on the commitment made by the last administration and leave Afghanistan, or say we weren't leaving and commit another tens of thousands more troops going back to war.
The major political headache now for the administration is going to be the US citizens left behind. About 100, up to as many as 200 estimated to still be there and wanting to leave. The issue for the administration is not just that this is a broken promise and that the president said in an interview with George Stephanopoulos that they were going to get out every US citizen who wanted to leave by August 31. The issue is that they're high risk to be taken in as hostages if the tensions escalate in the region, as many anticipate they will. Now the Taliban has full control.
Most of those who remain are dual citizens, long-time residents who had early decided to stay because of their family roots in Afghanistan. The bottom line, 90% of Americans in Afghanistan who wanted to leave were able to leave. And for those remaining Americans, there is no deadline. We remain committed to get them out if they want to come out.
Joe Biden is expected to speak to Scott Morrison this week. He is scheduled in to talk to the US president about the alliance and, of course, given that 70th anniversary of ANZUS. What is the state of our alliance at the moment?
Well, as you can imagine, it's always in flux, but it's hit a bit of a low point in the national security space. The fact that the US didn't call Australia to let us know at the higher political levels that the withdrawal date was going to happen. They were very public about the other countries that they have alliances with that they did call. Really, there's two things that the US engages with Australia on at the moment. Predominantly climate change is their big international push, but also China. And that's where we are quite congruous with the US. We stand on the same line there about the concerns, especially about aggression in the South China Sea. But the promise from Secretary of State Antony Blinken that Australia won't be left on the field when it comes to dealing with China, certainly that's something that I'm sure is front of mind as people watch what's happened in Afghanistan and those promises and where they've landed. It does have to be said the diplomatic mission in DC does seem very successful. The ambassador Arthur Sinodinos has a good reputation and he's actually managed to be pretty effective in especially a COVID environment with networking, negotiating with the Biden administration. Every time an Australian politicians come, we seem to get all of the meetings that are requested of the administration. But there are just a few fundamental differences, and it seems like that's helped put Australia on the back burner. And one of those really is climate change. The bushfires of the year before last are seared into the psyche of Americans.